And we are talking about connecting with customers, possibly one of the most important topics on the agenda today. Is high-quality data an algorithm fuel or an overhyped expense? This session is in association with Kubrix. Please welcome our speakers. We have Syed Zishan Ali, Regional Technology Lead, Middle East, Turkey, Africa, and Germany at Yum Brands. Shriram Srivanafasan, Director Digital Alamar. Aaron AV, Founder and CEO, Kubrix. And Skellum AI, Alan Honan, VP and Head of International Development, Wingstop Restaurants. And your moderator for this session is Duncan Fraser-Smith, founder the Cutting Edge Agency. Let's give them a nice warm welcome this afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I know it's 4 o'clock. This is there, but we get there. I promise you we'll get there because there's something really interesting about the panel, and I've got 4 amazing gentlemen with me on the stage this afternoon, and that is, if we look at pretty much every session that's taken place today, we've talked about sustainability, we've talked about AI, we've talked about homegrown concepts, but what's the one underlying factor that underlies all of that is data. We wouldn't be in a sustainable environment right now if we didn't have data that told us that this is where we need to be. I'm very, very thrilled to be joined by these wonderful gentlemen on the stage today, and I'm going to kick things off very quickly with them to give a quick introduction on who they are, but also for them to tell us how are they using data today, like right today in this particular moment in time, in their current businesses, and what are they doing. So Ram, maybe if I start with you.
Okay, thank you, Duncan. So my name is Ram, and I actually am the digital director for Alamar Foods, where we have Domino's Pizza and Dunkin' in the region.
Oh, one of me?
Yeah.
Right, okay, fair enough.
So to answer your question on the data, that is a little confidential, but I'll give you a high level. Data is the core for our business, and there is a huge strategy around it. Because going forward, it's going to be the next thing, and you are going to actually build your customer base and your retention based on that. So that's what it is.
Zishan, I mean, for you, obviously, Yum Brands, I think we're all very familiar with the brands that you represent. How are you kind of utilizing data today to affect your business?
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for inviting me. It's a pleasure of being here and representing Yum. So we treat data as a strategic asset, and that is what we have started building our strategic assets in a way that we can serve our customers better. How get to know them, what are their habits, what do they buy, where do they buy from, when do they buy it from, how we can personalize our offers to better meet their needs, and that is what we are building our whole tech stack to build.
Wow, fascinating stuff. Aaron, I mean, you're the king of data on the stage right now. You're the guy that we're all looking at going, well, we want what you have in order to make our businesses better. But what are you seeing today, especially kind of in the food and beverage QSR restaurant field, where data is being implemented today? Not what we're going to do in 5, 10 years from now, but actually today.
I think, yeah, so if you look at, data is just a digital footprint of things happening in the physical world. So one of the most important places where data is being used is in customer engagement, to what Sushan said. Right? How do you understand customers' habits, purchase patterns, and then infuse that into programs such as loyalty programs, customer engagement? How do you have personalized offers, reward points? So that's one area, the whole engaging with customer. That's one area where data is heavily being used. And then things like optimizing operations, optimizing supply chains. That is typically, if you have a large amount of data, larger brands are thinking into doing that.
Alan, I'm going to give you a free pass on my first question because I think what's been brought up here is fascinating, is customer engagement. From your perspective, how are you seeing data as a value tool in your business from the perspective of how you can actually talk one-to-one with your customers?
At Wingstop, we have approximately 70% of our customer interactions outside of the restaurant.
Wow.
So the initial contact we have with the customers, it's incredibly important to get that right first time. We actually have gone under a major personalization drive over the last few months, and currently we're working on launching that. And we're trying to overcome some very common problems within the data world. I mean, the first one being siloed information, which, you know, is quite an issue. The second element, I would say, is impersonal connection with the customers and disconnected systems across the board.
Wow, we're going to come back to you on that topic because I think that's fascinating. I just want to get a quick dive in here from my two gentlemen to my left. Customer engagement, data. Give me an example of how important that is for you. Ram, we'll start with you.
So like what he was saying, almost all the businesses around the world, or like even, let's take this region, right? Like you go and ask them whether data is important, everyone will say yes. But the funny thing is not many businesses do have a strategy around data. That's where we first start going wrong. Because for you to build engaging customer experience using data, you need to have a clear strategy on how you're using that data. Because the statistic says that like only 20% of the data that is being collected is being used by businesses. And out of that 20% that they use, only 1% is what they use to actually make business decisions. Just imagine the amount of data that is not being used. And when you're talking about a customer engagement, you, me, everyone sitting in the room wants to be made feel special. And how do you do it? Is using data. You show that you understand what they are doing and when they are doing, what are their needs and what are their likes, what are their dislikes, even before they tell you by their customer behavior pattern and whatnot. So for this, you need to have 360 of their customer data. So that's how you build the customer engagement properly, if you ask me.
And Zeshan, for you, how about if I just expand that out a little bit more? How much more involved is data in your customer engagement process now in the restaurants that you have under Yum, as opposed to what it was 5, 6 years ago?
So I think one of the things that we need to see is because of COVID, a lot of things changed. And I think digital was one of the things that got sped up. Before it was more in-person relationship, but after COVID, it was more relationship through different channels. And that kind of pushed us in a direction to start customer engagement and start that relationship. Now, like in every other relationship, we wanted to invest in that. We wanted to make sure that we know the customer, we get to know how to service them, we get to know that. And not only just getting data, but how to get that data. And then how to get that data, coming to an important part, is that what kind of data? You know, is that even relevant? Is that, you know, if I was to get today data of 5 years ago, would that be relevant for me? So relevance was the most important part that we started working towards, and the sanity of the data was also important for us to make future decisions.
Aaron, I'm throwing back to you from Alan's comment before. I mean, we're talking about getting data that is siloed, that doesn't talk to itself, that we can't, you know, we're spending all this time sweeping, mining, come up with any other jargon word you want for getting data into your business. But it all sits in its silos. Is there a tool or is there a way at the moment for us as restaurateurs, as operators, to be able to bring that under one umbrella so that we can really analyze it as a whole rather than just the individual pieces as a standalone?
Yeah, so see the reason, this is one of the observations. So the larger the company is, you'll find more silos, okay? The reason is that companies organize their workforce. They create departments based on a particular outcome. I need to have marketing team, the outcome is marketing. I need to have sales team, outcome is sales. I need to have a global marketing team, the outcome is global marketing. I need to have brand marketing team, this is brand marketing, correct? So what happened was that everybody tried to define and look at the data from their perspective. Were the semantic meaning of the data always same? My name, it's a customer data, okay, name, phone number, the purchase patterns, everything remains same. But since multiple departments started seeing data through their own prism, they tended to duplicate and create their own silos for operations, their own operations. So in their world, that's convenient, right? I'm a marketing team, I have all the marketing data with me. But that doesn't talk to an operations team's data. But the data is same again. So the inefficiencies in data often reflects the inefficiencies in the organization. That's what happened. Now, how do you make it silos? So technologically, you can have tools to put everything together. But one thing we should talk about, how can we even prevent that getting there? If I am starting a new organization and data is very important, how do I ensure that I don't get to a stage where I have this mess of data and then where I have to spend millions of dollars to put everything data together? So I think one is that it makes sense to, maybe have more centralized data governance, creating a semantic layer of data which everyone depending on, and also create, when you create teams, also take into account of the data. Like, of course, you create teams for outcomes, but ensure that they don't explicitly create silos. So that has to be part of your organizational culture day one. But see, a lot of the organizations started before the digital revolution, right? Yep. They're there because of what were the historical reasons. But new organizations, you have an opportunity to not to be there. And when you create platforms, try to have more aggregated platforms together. I mean, one of the classic examples in customer engagement, I was talking to Sishan earlier, typically people buy one platform for loyalty, one platform for CDP or marketing part. But both actually is consuming the customer data, and actually the meaning is kind of same. So if you have put them together, like one part of the business, you have one common platform, that will help you not to deduplicate data.
Yeah. I mean, Alan,
I wanted to add to
please,
that.
Go ahead.
The conversation that me and Aaron we were having earlier is to actually, as part of customer engagement, you want to have one view of the customer. And how that's one of the struggles that has happened in the past with some of the franchisees that we deal with is that everyone will have their own definition of the customer. Marketing will have 2 or 3 systems, ops will have 2 or 3, then food innovation will have 1 or 2. In fact, the goal is the same, to serve the customer best of the best. But getting everyone to agree and to look at the customer from one lens, that is also a struggle that some of the franchisees in Yum, they go through with. And I think that's very important that you all agree to one data set and one definition of the customer so everyone can focus on that.
I mean, Alan, I was going to come back, and it's a very good point, Seshan, but to what Ram said before about out of all the data that they're mining and bringing in at the moment, 1% of it's kind of used. Now, how many restaurants are in your purview at the moment? How much data is being pulled in? And it's been a hot topic. I mean, I was listening to the radio the other day about the actual amount of energy that is consumed in producing data for direct engagement with, improving customer experiences. If we're only using that top 1% and 99% of it is going to waste, is it actually worth the money?
Perhaps I'm the least qualified person on this stage, and I think every word I say testifies to that statement. I'd actually come at it from a slightly different way.
Please.
You mentioned, this mass of data. So let me just give you an example. Look at Uber, for example. Uber was inspired by a James Bond movie, Goldfinger. And James Bond is actually tracking on a little handheld device the location of Goldfinger. And that was the inspiration behind Uber. That plus a New Year's Eve in Paris where Travis and Diego couldn't get a taxi. But if you look at what Uber is, they don't own a car, like Airbnb don't own a hotel room. They have data and they're able to utilize that data. And here's what they've solved for. They've solved for a fundamental human condition, which is adversity to uncertainty. The beauty of Uber is you can track it. You can actually have an extra beer, or you can make a call. You can do something. The alternative is you're standing on a street, uncertainty principle. No one likes that. So your car arrives, you swoop out of the restaurant like some type of VIP, and your car is waiting there for you. And that's a very, very good, it's a great service, but it solves a fundamental human need. If we're to turn that on its head, we have this mass of data, an ocean of data, and I guess what's happening is we're looking at that data and we're saying, what the heck do we do with this data? Instead of turning it on its head and saying, okay, what are the fundamental customer challenges, the fundamental customer experience channels that we're trying to solve for. And I feel with this abundance of data, the tendency is, how much of it can I use?
Yeah, fair point. Anyone else want to jump in on that one? Because I've got another follow-up question, but shall I put through Ram? Yeah.
See, one thing, the question that you asked, right? Like whether is it worth it? Yes, it is worth it.
Okay.
That is the one-word answer.
That's the answer.
Yeah, but right now, if you look at how the overall data sets are being actually stored and consumed and processed, the technology is evolving at a rapid rate. Today, your Amazon, web service cloud systems, they have actually developed their own processors, which is like almost 50%, 60% more energy efficient compared to an Intel processor.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So things are actually progressing much faster. People do understand, like when you are actually having these massive companies working on storing and providing data like Azure or AWS, all these guys also understand the impact on the ecosystem and whatnot. So they are also like putting in a lot of money into the R&D of it. So things are getting much better there. And you will see that like the impact on the environment and the sustainability becoming much, much, much better.
See, it's one of the interesting points from my perspective is we in the consulting business use data now to remove the gut feeling for doing market intelligence into what sort of concept should go into which location. Data now tells us the consumer sentiment. They basically tell us that, Zishan, who potentially is a client of ours, but when he dines in Paris, he only eats at 3 Michelin-starred restaurants, and so maybe he's not going to fit in with what we do because it takes Zishan's footprint from all over the world and lets us know what he does. So coming back to that, there are these reams and plethoras, and I've forgotten what it is after a terabyte, a zettabyte, and it continues on. Storing privacy. Arun, I mean, you're probably the best to come to on this one. We are all afraid of what's coming next. I mean, I saw Optimus the other day at Elon Musk's demonstration, and that's just iRobot with Will Smith in it from 10 years ago, probably 15 years ago now. What about the privacy element of all of this? There's all of these, data, bytes and bytes and bytes of data on me, you, everyone else in this room. We all want to extract out of it what works for our businesses. The rest of it, as we said, is kind of not yet at the moment utilised in an effective way. Is it safe? Is it secure? Or are there steps that we need to do to store it in a better way?
I think the better word is trust. You share all your data with Google, almost, right? Because somewhere there's a trust element and you're not freaked out because of that. So the question is that how do you ensure that you are dealing with an entity you trust with and you exchange data in a trustworthy way, correct? And if that is assured, somewhere the privacy also becomes a less of concern. Right? So I think what we need to establish, I think we have made a lot of technology progress over a period of last few decades in ensuring that the trustworthiness, there are technology protocols, all the internet protocols to ensure that you're talking to a party which is digitally trusted. But other than that, privacy is sometimes it's a little overhyped threat because we know, right, as mentioned earlier, we do share data with trusted entities. We ask questions. Google asks you, because is it okay to track your purchases or map time? We say yes, good, because the outcome of that is Google processes data and it benefits me. I go to Amazon, I get the right recommended products. I'm okay to share with that. So there's a balance.
It's a balance, yeah. Zishan, Ram brought this up before, and I'd be curious to know from your perspective again how this applies. Personalization, the statement was made that everyone, those that have read Danny Meyer's book, Setting the Table, know the famous statement that everyone walks into a restaurant F&B outlet and they want to be made to feel important. It's kind of that we all wear this invisible sign. We all know this book, I know. But I'm curious to know, how do we use data to improve the personalization of the guest experience, for instance, in the brand portfolio of outlets?
So a couple of things that we look at is where is the customer originating from? What kind of relationship do we have with them? Is it a new customer? Is it a returning customer? After how long has he been returning? And then we basically tailor our deals accordingly. And we push specific kind of menu towards them. If it's lunchtime, if it's a snack time, if it's a dinner time, we make sure that those things are being pushed in a certain way that we have a profile built against that customer. Now, we want to make sure that, A, he's not being bombarded by multiple channels. Personalization can also be from a push notification to an email, to a phone call for that matter, if there's a complaint to it. But the idea is to increase frequency, and on top of that, keep that relationship healthy. Not to bombard it, to make it a toxic one that they don't want to talk to us anymore, or they feel that they're being spammed. So there's a very fine line between spamming and having that healthy relationship, that it's easier for you to pull them back anytime that you want.
Yeah. Alan, personalization from your perspective?
From my perspective, it comes down to relevance.
Yeah, I was thinking the same.
Relevance of the message.
Relevance is the message.
And you can bombard me 24/7 with the relevant message that addresses my need state. However, I will probably get just as upset if once a month, if I get a message that isn't relevant to my need state and to my perception of that brand.
So, do you have an example from?
I'd get in trouble if I mentioned
Okay, so we'll use
certain
brand
brands.
X, yes.
So, for example, my behaviors, I travel quite a bit. So when I'm at an airport, I would give my data to anyone to get online for 15, 20 minutes. So I think it's also situational as well. But yeah, I mean, I think real estate is a very good example here in the UAE. If any of you have ever made that fatal error of signing up on, Facebook, it can be, but I asked for it. So I'm also brave enough to admit that.
Fair enough. Arun, aside from F&B, what other businesses that we know in the marketplace now are kind of the pinnacle of the usage? I'm not going to say the word exploitation because that's not the right word, even though it is exactly what's happening, but of data in order to maximize their opportunity to enhance their product and their experience.
I
think Uber was a good one.
Yeah,
That was a good example.
I mean, if this in 2024, almost every industry has woken up to the data revolution. If you ask me these questions, 15 years ago, like in the 2010s, I would say the industries which started taking a lot of data-driven thing, of course, finance, the insurance, who all benefited from understanding the customers. Industries which can maximize capital gains, reduce expenses from data, they took the first step forward. Even in B2C segments, retailers, the traditional retailers adopted data, personalization, etc. At least a decade earlier than restaurants, for example.
Telcos, for example.
Telco, for example.
Telcos did a marvelous job with that.
Yeah, exactly. Restaurants is fundamentally it's a people business. It's a relationship business somewhere, right? The restaurants enhances relationship between people by providing an ambience and a facility for people to connect. So they were relatively reluctant in immediately consume technology, data and technology. Basically the COVID is the one which accelerated that change and then created a new mindset.
It used to be that we have to listen to our clients in order to understand what they wanted, but now we almost predict what they want before they set foot through the door. Ram, from your perspective, where is AI going to take us now in the predictive model? So we have our data, which technically is historical information. It's not live, it's not real, and we're not predicting the future. Do you see a way where AI and data are going to come together to actually produce future-proof, again, wrong word, but you know what I mean, guys, it's the future thing, that forward-thinking notion as to creating that image of our clients and our customers?
So for us to actually understand what we are talking about in terms of AI, AI is what? It's just a statistical model, a well-advanced statistical model with nodes and weightages. That's all that it is. So using the data, what this model actually does is you can spin it around the whichever way you want it. You can have a high level of confidence and regression of the data sets. So there is one data set here, another data set here. You can actually find the relationship between this. And maybe like say like these two data sets, how does it impact the other behavior, which is a third data set? So it's very difficult for you to sit and manually do it. AI will superpower it. It makes it much more easier for the companies to do it and at a higher speed. And also, for example, let's talk about marketing, right? So if I want to actually, like, you are a new customer who has come in, I got the basic data of you. I started making a profile of you, okay? With the profile that I actually have, then I start predicting what type of lookalike audience you are going to actually belong to from whatever data that I have of you. Yeah. And based on that, I will make recommendations. Based on the clicks that you make, I further like make it much more relevant for you. Yeah. This is how Netflix actually does it. It's purely a matter of clustering of customers' behavior, and then that's how they actually show you the recommendations. So.
Guys, I've got to say, I mean, we could continue chatting on this for ages because I think we're only scratching the surface of this. I think the outcome is to be made for all of us in the room, the value proposition around data versus quality data versus the expense for bringing it in. I'm certainly more confident after having this conversation that it's a path we're continuing on, we're not stopping. But with that, does anyone in the room have any questions for my amazing panel here before we hand over the reins to the next session?
Anyone like to ask any questions? Don't be shy.
Maybe just while we're waiting for a question,
go for it.
Just to share a thought with everyone in the room and maybe this panel. We're talking about using data to interact with our customers, but what about vice versa? What about how our customers interact with us, especially in terms of, you know, frictions, customer service, or even reaching out? And I guess the trend for me for the last 15, 20 years in my experience dealing with large companies is we love you as a customer, but never try and contact me.
On that note, I actually have nowhere else to go. I think that summed it up perfectly. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please thank my panel this afternoon? Thank you, guys. Great job.